Hey, everybody. It's great to be here again with you on a Thursday evening. Thanks so much for coming. This is my live show. And on this live show, I am showing lesson demos, also doing lesson builders, and I'm answering people's questions. In the past, I've just been answering questions that have been coming up in the show. Tonight, I'm also going to address some questions that have just been coming up in general. So I get a lot of emails, YouTube comments, Facebook messages, things like that with different questions. And some of the questions I think we could all really benefit from hearing the answers to. So I'll be addressing some of those questions at the end of this session. And if you're here live with me and you have a question about what I'm presenting, feel free to drop that in the comments and I will try to bring some of those questions into the show to address them here as well. So tonight we are going to be looking at how to build a Google Slides HyperDoc from scratch. And this live show actually came directly from some requests. I got a few emails and people have been asking just to see the nuts and bolts of how to build a HyperDoc. So if you're looking more for some tips and tricks around different kind of elements of how to create individual copies of documents and put them in HyperDocs, I would recommend you check out my first live show, which is about that. And if you want to see more of a lesson design show, that would be something that I covered in my digital citizenship live demo. So this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be more at the nuts and bolts level of actually just getting into a Google slide presentation and actually building it. So we'll look at things like adding text boxes and using some add-ons that will make your slides just a little bit more interesting to look at. And if people have questions about what I'm doing or specific questions about how to do different things with Google Slides that you want to ask live, please go ahead and ask those. So we're going to start here with looking first at a lesson plan design that you would do in a Google Doc. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend just jumping into Google Slides first. The reason for that is because when you're designing lessons, I do think it's important to be able to visually see in one place how a lesson is going to progress across a sequence. So if you're building it in Google Slides just kind of right off the bat, then that can be difficult to see just because of the design. So I do like to set up my lessons first in a unit plan designer that then later becomes a lesson plan designer. So this is actually taken from my online course, and my online course, the 21st Century Classroom, is all about how to build a tech integrated curriculum. And this is the place where we start looking at standards, how to take standards, how to take essential questions, break them down into learning targets across a lesson sequence. There could be a whole show about this, so I'm not going to get into this in great detail, but I just want to show that I'm doing some of the thinking and the work here on a Google Doc about what my essential question is going to be, how am I going to break up learning targets across a lesson sequence, and I use the 5 E's lesson sequence. How am I going to embed the 4 C's for 21st century learning? And then what activities do I want to do and which tech tools do I want to use? So all that thinking comes first. And then after I've done that thinking, I'm going to build my slides, which is the last step of building a lesson. Now, in today's show, I'm going to be focusing on a HyperDoc. HyperDocs typically, when kind of in the pre-school closure environment, would have been more of an asynchronous flipped classroom type activity. I do think, and I talked a lot about this in my other live show, I do think that you can take some elements of them and do them live in a synchronous environment and then push students to do some of the work offline, some of the work independently, and even in small groups. So I'll show a few of those techniques. But again, this show is really going to be focused on just kind of technical aspects of building slides. So my first piece of advice is that you don't use the Google Slides templates. I would recommend that you start with a third-party program. So the two that I really like are Slides Mania and Slides Carnival. They're both awesome places to get cool looking slides, and just taking a template from one of these third-party websites is going to make your slides look so much better already. So I would recommend that you grab one from here. And you'll see that they have holiday type theme slides and things like that. I would try, if you can, to see if you can find a slide deck that relates in some way to the lesson that you're doing. That can kind of just add an element of fun to the slides. And again, when you're making a slide, you do want to focus on how it looks. Presentation matters. So picking a slide that looks kind of fun is definitely going to just add a slight upgrade in your engagement. So the lesson that I'm going to show today is related very tangentially to politics. I know we have an upcoming election in the United States. A lot of people are probably teaching something related to politics. Today, I'm going to show a lesson around whether or not art can be used to influence people's political beliefs. So that will be the essential question that students will be answering. And so today, I just want to find a template that looks a little bit artistic. So all you need to do when you go to a website like Slides Carnival or Slides Mania is check out templates from the top here. So you could look at different categories. So for example, I might be kind of into looking for something that's creative. And then when you find something that you want, you just need to click on it, go to preview and download. And then you can either get a PowerPoint template or you can get a Google Slides template. So here I'm going to click Google Slides template. And then if you want, you can preview it. They mostly look the same. Obviously, they're going to have a different theme, but in terms of the different layouts that are given to you, they're going to be really similar. So once you're ready to choose it, you're going to go there to Use Template. And what that's going to do is bring this Google Slides into your Google Drive. So the first thing I do is just click X on that and then go over here and give it a name. So you'll want to give it the name of your lesson. I'll just name it Art and Politics right now. And then you'll see that you essentially have a whole slide deck here. So you can take all of these slides if you wanted and just directly edit them. You can also still use the regular slide adder. So you can go up here to bring in new slides, and these will bring in the slide layouts that don't have the additions necessarily. So you'll see below here that this one already has some icons and things like that. If you wanted this, but you didn't want all of that extra stuff, of course you could delete it, or you could just bring one in up here as well. So today I am going to show you a few different add-ons and extensions that you can use with Google Slides. I know not everybody has access to them. There are some ways that you can get around not being able to access an extension. I'll show you a couple of those as well. But these are just add-ons and extensions that they're not necessary, but they can make your slides a little bit more fun. So one of them, and these can all be found if you go up here to add-ons and go to get add-ons. One of them is this add-on, and it is the flat icon add-on. Now, flat icon is basically just going to allow you to bring in some fun icons. And this is a really quick and easy way to personalize and make your slides look a little bit better. And another add-on that I'm going to show today is Magic Rainbow Unicorn Slides. So what this allows you to do is basically take text and make it into a rainbow color. So just another way to add a little bit of fun to your slides. I also like the Unsplash Images slide add-on. This is one you don't have to have. You could just get an image from Unsplash, but Unsplash just has kind of cooler images, more artistic. They're also copyright free, so you don't have to worry about violating copyright with getting Google images. Though if you're just using it for teaching, you don't really need to worry about that. So this is another one I would recommend that you get just for making slides look a little bit more interesting. And then the other two are not add-ons, they're extensions. So I love Bitmoji. Bitmoji is definitely a big part, or my Bitmoji is a big part of how I put together my Google Slides lessons. And I also like the Giphy extension for Chrome. So both of these will allow you to essentially just drag a Bitmoji or drag a GIF into your slides and make them look a little bit more interesting. So again, I'm going to build now in front of you essentially a HyperDoc that's based on the lesson that I have planned. So what I'll do is I'll go back here and I'll look at my essential question. Actually, I'm not going to use this exact lesson, but just to show you, I could copy and paste it if I wanted. And then I'm going to go over here and I'll write in my essential question to start. So what I'm going to do for this lesson is show you a HyperDoc. Does art have the power to influence people's political beliefs? All right. Influence political beliefs. Okay. Now, this isn't awful, right? If you do something like this, just kind of writing it in. But there are a couple of things we can do to just personalize this, make this look a little bit more interesting. Now, one is not so much about presentation, but more about tracking what you're doing and making sure that you have all the elements that you want to include. And that's to actually put a little box at the top that indicates what part of the lesson you're in. So here what I'm going to do is add a text box, and just up at the top here, I'm basically, this is more for me actually. I'm going to remind myself of where I am in the lesson. So I'll grab that text box. You can, drag it around, resize it. I'm going to backfill this by using the fill color here, and I'll do something like white so it's a little bit more visible. I can make the text bold here and then just size it down a little bit. So again, the purpose of this is just going to allow me to kind of keep track of where I am in a particular lesson. Okay, now this slide right now is okay, but could be better. So one thing that I'm going to do here is bring in a Bitmoji. And since it's a question, I like to bring in these types of Bitmojis, that have like me thinking about something. So I'm going to pull this one in where I'm considering this question. And if you're a person who is not able to get these extensions, let's say you have Bitmoji installed on another browser, you can open it on that other browser where you do have access to it. And then what you would do, rather than dragging it directly in, is just drag and drop it onto your browser. So you might not be able to see it here, but basically I'm just dragging it onto my browser. And then what you can do is go insert image, and then you just bring that image in from your computer. So you find it on your desktop, and then you can bring it in. So it's a kind of end around if you're not able to bring that Bitmoji in. Okay, so I have this little thinking face here, and what I'm thinking is, just to make this look a little bit more interesting, rather than just have the text here kind of sitting, not really doing anything, I'm going to add a thought bubble. So you can add thought bubbles and dialogue bubbles by going up here to Insert. You can go to Insert Shape, Callouts, and you'll see here that there's a little thought bubble. So if you click on that, what that will allow you to do is drag. And so you'll see I can get a thought bubble there. And then if you drag the little corner here, that will actually allow you to drag it over to your head. And then what I'm going to do is cut the text, and I'll put the text right here on top of the thought bubble. So now, drag that around. Now, rather than just have text kind of sitting out there, not really doing anything interesting, I'm going to have it in my thought bubble. So I'll delete this other box here as well, and then I'll size this down just a little bit so that it fits. You can play with the alignment tools. One of the alignment tools that is useful is the one that's below the left, center, right align tool. And that's to either align to the top or to center align something or align it along the bottom line. So this can also just be a helpful tool to make sure that everything's aligned. So I'm going to drag that around. Now, I kind of also don't really like that gray background there. So here I'm going to fill this. I'll fill it with white. And I'm going to go up to the border color. I want that to be black. And I want it to be a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go here to border weight and just make that a little bit thicker. Okay, so there I've already built an initial slide that just looks slightly more interesting for students. And you can play around with this, make this a little bit bigger if you wanted to try to fill the space a little bit more, which would probably be a good idea. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next slide. And for the next slide, I always include the learning targets. So here I'm going to go up to the add new slide, and I'm just going to bring in this title with one column. And I'll start here by just adding learning targets, and then I'm going to write them in. And I'll go up here to bullet points. And so the first thing that we're going to do for this lesson is have students share prior knowledge about our key vocabulary. So they're going to share prior knowledge about what they already know about art, what they already know about politics, and what the word beliefs means. And then for the next target, we're going to make some observations about political art and make inferences. Now, one thing I do want to point out, notice how I share prior knowledge, maybe not so great, but I'm trying to use academic language in my learning targets. And you'll also notice that as the skills build across the sequence, that the academic language that I'm using is also going to become more rigorous. Students are going to have to apply knowledge in a more rigorous way. So after they've just made some initial observations, they're going to start to actually interpret the messages of some pieces of art. And then I'm going to have them research and locate pieces of political art and comment on them. And then to end, I'm going to have students make an argument, or sorry, I'm going to have them, let's even use a better word, compose an argumentative paragraph. Okay. Now, again, first of all, one of the things that you'll notice here, right, is that it's boring. It looks boring. Nothing super wrong with that, but one thing that you can do to just make it slightly more interesting here is bring in an icon. So for learning targets, you can go up here to add-ons and go to the flat icon add-on. And you can see I already have it pulled up here, but I'm going to search for a target. And Flat Icon has all these different free icons that you can pull in. They also have premium ones, but it's not necessary to get those. So to get one, you just click on it and then click Insert. And that's going to bring that in. And then you can resize it, drag it around wherever you want it to go. So just a minor thing, not that big of a deal, but something that just makes it look a little bit more interesting. So definitely recommend that you check this out. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the actual material. So the first thing that students are going to do here will be the engage phase of the lesson. And in this phase of the lesson, they're going to be sharing their knowledge about art, beliefs. And I also forgot here my little box. So I'm just going to go back here. I'm going to copy and paste this. And again, this is going to be just my way of indicating where I am. So I'll mark this one up here for myself, LTs or learning targets. And then what I'm going to do on this next one that I make is make sure that I've put that it's actually for the engage phase. I'm going to pick this slide just because I like that it kind of has an emphasis in the center, and I don't want it to be too text heavy. I'm actually going to be pushing students out to another web page to do an activity, and it looks a little bit different. So I'm going to pull this one in and then go up here and make sure that I've included that this is the engage phase. Now for this slide, I'm just going to take this text, I'm going to write over it, and I'm actually going to add some different text boxes here. So what we're going to do is all just norm on what these words that we're studying mean to them. So we'll start here. What do these words mean to you? And I'm going to size this down a little bit and drag it up. And one of the things that you'll notice as well with Google Slides is this alignment tool. So the red line in the center right now is telling me that it's center aligned. So if I start dragging it around over here, it's not going to look so good. It's helping me out, letting me know where the center line is so that I can make sure that I have it correctly placed. And then if you want to just make sure, like, see how U is at the bottom, if you just don't want that to happen, you can drag it out so that it's where you want it to go, and then just re-center align it there. Now, what I'm going to do here is copy and paste this text box over a few times. So here, I'll copy it, and then I'm going to drag it down. I'll re-center it, and I'm just going to put the words here. So going to do art and beliefs and political. And then that got pushed up a little bit, so I can always just move that around by dragging that around wherever I want it to go, right? And since these are my words here as well, I'm going to emphasize them, maybe make them bigger. And if you wanted, you could also change the font just to really make them pop. So I'm just going to add bold here. I'll make them a little bit bigger here, and then I'm going to bring them down a little bit. Okay. All right. So now what I want to do is push students over to another program where they're actually going to do an activity. So the whole point of a HyperDoc is basically that you're curating different tech programs. You're putting together a lesson strategically so that students can ultimately achieve a learning target. So they're not going to be doing the work here on the slides. They're going to do it today in Jamboard. So what I'll do here is just add another box. So I'm going to copy this, paste this below, and make sure it's center aligned. And then I'm going to change this to say, click here to share your response. And I'm not going to, if I did all this, this would take forever, but what I did here is I created a Jamboard, very basic. I just added some sticky notes with the words, and then I used the shapes tool here to bring in some boxes, and then just make sure here under share that it's actually not going to look like this. It's going to look restricted. So you want to make sure that you have set the share restrictions appropriately so that anyone with the link can access it. Then you'll click here, make sure that they can edit it so that they're not just viewers. I'm going to copy this link. Then I'm going to go back to my slide. And there are a couple ways you can do this, but here what I'm going to do is just highlight that. And just to show you here, I'll go up here to insert link. You could also right click or go to insert link here. And then what I'll do is paste by hitting Command V, paste that link in, click apply. Now, the text color, not so great there because it doesn't show. So I'm going to change that as well to a blue, which I know that students associate more with a link. All right. So for this part of the lesson, students are now going to go over to this Jamboard. They're going to record their responses. I'll do some modeling for them. So this would still potentially be synchronous. You could push students in an asynchronous environment to do this on their own, not a problem. But I always think best if you can do some modeling. So model what you're looking for. They're going to share some ideas. And then the other thing that I like about doing something like this synchronously is that you can then come back, have a discussion about what students did. Okay, so now after this engage phase, we're going to move into an explore phase. So here I'm going to grab this slide down here. And one of the reasons I'm choosing this one is just, you notice that I haven't brought in any images yet. So I want to just mix it up. So I'm trying to mix up the layouts, and I've used some icons. I used a Bitmoji. I'm also noticed not dropping a Bitmoji in every single slide. I want to do something different here. So what I want to do is bring one of these in that has a picture along the side, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. And I'll start here by going up, and I'm going to copy this whole box again and just make sure that I remember where I'm at in my lesson. And this is the explore phase. So for this part of the lesson, students are basically going to be going out and learning some information. So we just did a little bit of engagement, just accessing prior knowledge, seeing what people know about different key terms. But now we actually want to go out and start to look at some art that might be changing people's minds or intended to change people's minds. So what I'll do here is name the core piece of the learning target. So if we go back here where it says make observations and inferences, I want to let students know that academic language. I want to let them know what they're going to do. So I'm going to say that. They're going to make observations and inferences. And you can also go back here and copy and paste your learning target, and you can put it right next to those words. And essentially what that will do is just kind of emphasize for you and for your students, hey, this is one of our learning targets, right? This is a skill that we're working on right now. Okay, then down below, what I'll do here is just give some instructions. So I'm not gonna like write up a whole block of text. If you have a lot of instructions to give, I have another recommendation for how you do that, which I'll show in a little bit. So I just want to keep this brief here. So I do want to tell them what they need to do. So I'm going to ask them, what do you see? Name as many details as possible. This will be the observation part. And then I'm going to have them start to make some inferences. So what can you infer? And what I want them to start to think about is, what do you think the author's intended message is? What do you think the author's intended message is? Okay, there we go. Yes. All right. And then what I'm going to do is have them go back to Jamboard. So I'll have click here to go to our class Jamboard to post. Okay. Now this again obviously doesn't relate this image over here, right? So the way that you can change this is, whoops, by what's going on here? By going up here, sorry, my right click is not working. So I'll go here to background, and notice how right now it has a color, it has an image. What I'm going to do is choose an image here, and I can go to Google image search, and I'll go ahead and bring in an image of a painting that is intended to impact people's political beliefs. So I'm going to bring in Picasso's Guernica and then click insert. Done. And you'll notice how it already brings it over on this side of the slide. So it looks, kind of cool there. And then what I did with this Jamboard, and you could choose here, I just ended up making one on the same board. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this all at once. It would be okay if you did, but you either might want to do just separate boards or create these next frames afterwards. But just for the sake of this, I pre-built it in the same Jamboard. So what I did is I created a frame. I brought in an image of Guernica and just brought in some additional paintings that students would be making observations about and inferences about what do they see, and then what do they think that the author might be or the artist might be trying to communicate through these paintings. So again, I'll just make sure that I have that shareable link. I'll copy that link, and I'm going to go here, and I'll turn this into a hyperlink. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I see some questions are coming through, and I'm just going to address some questions. Okay, so this question is from Karina. So thanks for your question, Karina. Do I post my presentation for students on my learning management system? Yes, and I can get into that a little bit. I do talk a little bit more about that in the other live show, but I would, the intention of this one, and I think it'll make more sense once we get a little bit more into it, is that every student would have a copy of this. So you can set them up, like actually the way it's set up currently, there's no reason for students to have their own copy, but you'll see later that I am going to want students to actually write directly on it. And I'm actually going to construct an activity where they would engage with other students. And in that case, I am going to want to post it to my learning management system, and I will want students to have an individual copy of it. Great question. Okay, so now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to move on to the explore phase. Here, I kind of just want to do my own thing. So if you really kind of want a blank canvas where you can fully design it, then you can either choose this caption slide or this blank slide here. So I'm going to choose this one, and I'll grab my box to start just to remind myself where I am here. And this is now going to be the explain phase. So the purpose of having this kind of wide open canvas here is that you can essentially fully customize it however you would like. And so what I'm going to do to start is add a text box up here at the top. And for this part of the lesson, again, I'm going to go back and remember what I'm doing here. I want students to interpret the message, right? So up here, that's what I'm going to write, interpret the message so that they know what they're doing. And right now, if you were to click off of this text box, it just kind of hangs there. Not all that interesting. So if you want to add a border, you can add a border around it. I typically like to make them pretty thick. And you can also, do things here, obviously, like increase the size, play with the font, all kinds of different things like that. You can also backfill these. So if you wanted to add some color to the background, you could do that there as well. Okay, now I'll make this, let's make it bold there. Okay, now the next part is what I'm going to do here is give students some instructions, and I want them to actually engage with group members here. So I'm going to write out my instructions, and so I'm going to start here again with a text box. So I'll grab that, and I'm actually, let's say I did it like that, it weren't to size, right? It didn't match that. If you just drag the corner here, see how that alignment tool, there's a little T-bar that matches up with the title. So that tells me it's right along that edge. And then I can just drag it down from there. So that's just a good way if you want to make sure that it's all lined up. Okay, so now what I want to do is basically give students instructions in order so that they know what to do. So the first thing that I'm going to have them do is record the message, or record your interpretation about the message in the boxes. You'll see what that's going to look like in a second. Then I want them to actually share this slide with their group members. I'll show you how I'll do that in a moment. I want them to leave a comment on each other's slides, and I'm going to prompt them. So I'll give them some sentence starters here about what the comments could look like. So I can ask them to say whether or not they agree or disagree with the interpretation of the method, the message, and they might want to add some additions. So do you have any additions to add? Okay. Now, I could leave it like this. Again, not so bad. The instructions are there. It's not awful, but I'm going to show you how to make this look a little bit better. Now, before I do that, what I am going to do here is duplicate this box because I want to have students be able to put the message directly on this slide. So this comes up a lot, this issue of should I link out to an external graphic organizer, an external document where students are going to be filling in answers. And I think if you're with students in class, that's not a problem. It just comes with certain complications. So I actually like this method of basically taking text boxes here, and then you can add a line, thickness around the edge, and you can even write in there, write your answer here. There are ways you can do this as well with setting up master slides so that they can only edit this part. I don't think that's necessary really unless you're doing drag and drop slides. I can do another show about that later, but this is totally fine. Students will know where to write, and it's, in my experience, they're not really messing with the other parts of the slides. So I'll align that one there as well. Same thing, write your answer, and I'll make the edge of this border bold. And so what students are going to do here is write their answers in these boxes. I'll add a couple more text boxes here. So here at the top, I'll just basically add a label. So this will be like art piece number 1. And I'll size that down a little bit here. Drag it where I want it to go. I sized it the wrong way. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that this is center aligned, make it bold. All that stuff's kind of not totally necessary, just again, trying to make it look a little bit more visually appealing. And then to make sure I just have this exact same thing again, I'll copy, I'll paste it and move it over here to the other one. I'll line it up. So notice how I'm using these alignment tools, make sure it's aligned, and then do art piece number 2. Okay. So now they know, right? Record your interpretation about the messages in the boxes. But I even want to make this more explicit. So what I'm going to do here to start is just make this a little bit bigger here. Let's basically fill up the space. And the first thing I want to do is actually just indicate in these boxes. So I'm going to go over here to insert, and I'm going to insert an arrow. So what this will allow me to do here is draw an arrow. And then just like I did with that thinking bubble, I can do some color fill here. And I can also make it bolder. So it's just pointing to them that they need to write their messages in those boxes, right? And let's say as well that maybe I've taught students how to share with their group members, but I just want to also give them a visual cue. So what I'm going to do here is go up to the share button, and I'll use, I have a Mac, so I'll use Command-Shift-4, and I'm going to just drag over the share button, and that's going to make a little screenshot for me. And so what I'm going to do with that screenshot, oops, I did the wrong thing there, is copy it to my clipboard. I'm going to copy it to my clipboard, save it to my clipboard, and then I'm just going to paste it. So now I have a little share button to give some instructions so that they know, right, I have to click on the share button. Now you might be thinking, how do they know who my group member is? So what I did here is I created a Google Doc, and in this Google Doc, you could basically continue to mix up which group a student is in. And so what you would want to do if you did something like this, set it to be view only. You would get the shareable link, make sure here that you've changed it so that you can either change it so anyone with the link can view, or you can set it for your specific students. Leave it as view only. Go here to copy the link, and then I will insert this link. So now when students get here, they could click on that link, they could see what group am I in, and you might need to include their emails here, but the idea is that they are sharing this slide with a handful of their students. And if I want to also emphasize, leave a comment, what does that look like? Go up here to insert, go to insert comment, and that's going to pop up my little comment box. Again, I'll do Command-Shift-4. I'll get a little screenshot there of the comment. I'll copy that to my clipboard. Sorry, keep doing that. Okay, copy it to my clipboard, and then same thing, I'm going to go ahead and bring this in, and then I'll size it down so that it fits. Okay, so just right there, just made this a little bit more. I think probably here I need to bring that down, size that down just a little bit. Okay, maybe align this so that it's kind of lined up with the other one so it looks more visually appealing. All right. Okay, so already I've now created a slide where students can type directly on the slide. They don't have to go over to some external document and write their answers. I have pointed out where they need to do that and just added some of these little visual cues. I might want to clean some of this stuff up, like fixing the alignment and all that. But that is, I just wanted to show you that because that's one of the reasons why I like using the fully blank canvas slide, because it just gives you a lot of space to do something like this. All right. Okay. Other thing that I wanted to show, sorry, here is how to bring in a GIF. So another way to just kind of make it a little bit more interesting is to go up here to Giphy, and then you can search in Giphy. So if you wanted to do something like a thinking GIF and then drag that in, you can just drag and drop that in. Then you can, oops, undo that. You can resize that wherever you want it to go. And then you can do something like put it up here at the top just to add another little element. So the GIFs, like the Bitmojis, not necessary, but just something that I like to do for fun. Okay, so that's the explain phase. And now what we're going to do is move over to the elaborate phase. So for this part of the lesson, I'll go here and I'm going to just bring in a regular Title I column here. And again, I'll take that little box up here at the top just to remind myself where I am. And for this part of the lesson, if you're not familiar with the 5 E's, essentially it's just going to be a deeper application of knowledge. So students, I've guided students more in a more scaffolded way to look at some art, to make some interpretations. And now I want to open it up so that they're able to go out, find some other art pieces that have a political message, and then come up with their own interpretations of that message as well. So I'll indicate to them up here at the top what they're going to do. So I'll remind myself that here they're going to research and locate pieces of political art. So I'll write that. And then here I'm just going to write out some instructions for what they're going to do. And I'll add some bullet points here because this one I am going to have be a little bit more text heavy. So if you're going to have more text, then I definitely recommend that you use some bullet points. And if you wanted to change it up, you want to use some different ones so that you're doing something that looks different, you can also change the way that those bullet points look. So what I'll do here is have students first search online for works of political art. And obviously, depending on how experienced students are with doing this, with how much you've already done work with searching for sources online, you might have to do a mini lesson around that. I'm kind of assuming here that students already know, I've already taught them about finding information online, so I'm just going to direct them to do that. Then the activity will be to post what they found to Padlet. And when they post it, they're going to make an interpretation. And then I'm going to add a sub bullet here again to give them some potential sentence frames or sentence starters that they could use. They don't have to use. You could mandate that they use them. It's totally up to you. So one could be, I think this piece of art is trying to change people's minds about ... And you might also say something, like whether or not they think that it's effective. And this could potentially be a place. So I mentioned before that if you have a lot of instructions, and particularly if you're doing something asynchronously, you don't just want to like load up the slides with tons of text. This may be a place where I need to do some additional instruction. So if you wanted to do that, it would also be an appropriate part of the lesson to do something like record a video in Loom or Screencastify, and then bring that link in. So here, I'm gonna say, watch this tutorial to learn how. And then let's say, that you're in a place like Loom. Go over here to Loom, and you have a video that you've already made. You're just gonna copy that link. You're gonna bring that in, and you're gonna link that here so that students can watch a little mini lesson. So your Screencastify or Loom tutorials, they don't need to be obviously just at the beginning. You could jump in the middle with a mini lesson that's explaining a part of the lesson. I actually really like using them at this part of the lesson for the elaborate phase, because oftentimes you're gonna have students applying knowledge in a higher level way. They might be creating something. So this can be a good place in the lesson to do that. All right, so I'm gonna jump over here. A couple questions. Avril, great to have you on tonight. And Avril is actually one of the reasons why I am doing this live show. She requested it along with a couple other people. So great to have you here, Avril. Avril, the bullets are just up here in the bullets menu. So if you go down here to bulleted list, that just gives you some different options. So you'll see here that if I wanted to change it, you could change it to these boxes and stuff like that. So yeah, place you can access some cool looking bullets. All right, and let's see. Kathleen, thank you for your question. Okay, so yeah, thanks for the clarification here. So Kathleen is asking, after students have their own copy of the slide deck, how do they share just that one slide with their group? They don't. They would share the entire thing, but that's also totally okay. That's the only part in this lesson where students are actually doing work and writing anything on it. So it doesn't really matter if they're sharing the rest of the slide deck with their students or with their group mates. All right, okay. So one other element, or two other elements actually, that I want to add to this slide deck here, because again, this is kind of boring, is an icon. So just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to go up here to add-ons. I'm going to go to my icons again, and I'm going to find a little art palette that I found here. You can search for art palette, and I'm going to bring that one in. And then again, if you're just joining now, what I'm showing here is flat icon. This is an add-on that allows you to bring in a bunch of cool icons for free that can just add a little element of fun to your slide. So add a little art palette there. And I notice I don't like that alignment, so I'm going to bring that over. And then something else that I might want to do, I'm actually going to change those bullets back like those, is go up here to Bitmoji, and I might want to pull something else in. So I found this one, for example, me and the computer, that I'm going to drag and drop in to show an element of researching. Okay. All right, so there, I've taken what is, it's not that it's super fancy and interesting now, but I've made it a little bit more interesting, and also added a teaching element in here as well. Okay, now for the last part of this lesson, we're going to have students make an argument. So they're going to be taking this information and they're now going to answer the essential question. So I'm just going to go back up here and I'll bring in another slide. And here I'll do this 2 columns slide. And they're now going to need to make an argument about whether or not art is an effective tool for changing people's political beliefs. One of the reasons why I wanted to show this is because I'm going to show you how you can link it back to a specific assignment in Google Classroom where students could actually post this response. So I'll start here with rewriting the essential question. Does art have the power to influence political beliefs? And remember I told you about in the beginning, if you were here, the add-on Magic Rainbow Unicorn slides. So I'm going to open this up. And again, this is really minor, but just kind of add a fun element. I'm going to highlight the word art. I'm going to click Start the Rainbow Magic. You'll notice that you can bring in actually original rainbow colors, whatever you want. And that will just turn this into a little rainbow word. So, not a big deal, but again, just a little element that can make this a little bit more fun. And I'll make that a little bit bigger. Okay. Now, what I want students to do here is post your response to Google Classroom. So they're going to post a response to Google Classroom, and then what I want them to do is respond to at least 3 of their peers. So first, just on a technical level, what I need to do is get the link to where they would actually be posting this response. So what I did here in Google Classroom in this demo Google Classroom account is create a question. So the question here is, can art change people's political beliefs? And when students respond, I set it up so that they would be able to respond to each other's questions. So what I'm going to do is go here to the 3 dots right next to the assignment. I'm going to copy the link, and then I'm going to paste that link in. So rather than going up to the top of Google Classroom, like if you were just to go here, that's not going to take students directly to the assignment. But if you copy the link to the assignment, then it's going to take them to this exact question. So when they open it up, it will open it up right to this question so that they'll know where they need to respond. And then if you wanted, you could also give students sentence frames here to prompt them for how you would want them to respond in a similar way that we did before. And then last thing that I'm going to do again here is just add some icons to make this a little bit more interesting. So since they're going to be posting a response, I'll go up here to add-ons, and I'm going to bring in a writing add-on. So I'll search for writing and check this one out. Bring in a little picture of pencil and paper right there. Just make sure it's aligned. And then I want to find another one, like a conversation, to show that they're going to be responding to their peers. Do that one is good. And insert. And same thing, I'll resize that one and make sure that it is aligned. Oh, and forgot here, last thing is to say that this is the evaluate stage. So this is essentially going to be the assessment, right? They're going to have to do a piece of writing, and then they're going to share that with their peers and respond to their peers. So again, I want to thank Slides Carnival for this awesome template. And I hope that you learned just a little bit about how to make slides a little bit more fun. And I'm by no means a slides master designer or anything like that. There's just a couple of tricks that you can do to make them a little bit more interesting for students. So at this point of the show, I'll be taking some questions. So if there's still questions that I haven't gotten to, then I'll see if I'm able to find them in this chat. And then, and if you have a question now that you put a while back that you want to drop in, go for it, put it in, because there's a lot going on in the comments. So I might not be able to see it. And then I'm also going to be addressing some questions that have come up in email and have come up related to previous shows. So I'm actually going to start with a question from, I believe, David. Yeah. So David had a question about Adobe Spark. And he, so the last live show was about Adobe Spark, and he wanted to know kind of what was going on with the sharing. He was having some difficulty with students sharing their work back to Google Classroom, and then also wanted to know where to post work. So my guess with that, David, is that you need to change the way, or you need to explicitly show students how they give you the shareable link as opposed to the link that would take them to their account. So this is a graphic design that I showed last week in the show. And what I found that students often do is go up here and they grab this whole link at the top and they try to share this. But if they're trying to do that, it's going to try to take you into their account. So when you're using Adobe, you have to have students go over here to the share button, then click on this publish link. It's going to take a moment to generate a link, and then you need to have them share this published link. So that's not intuitive. I've had many students, even after showing this to them, not share it correctly, and then it'll try to take you into their account and you'll have an error. My guess is that that's what's happening. Now, your other question was about the web page and where I would have students share them. I personally like having students share on a Padlet. And so what students would do is basically go to Padlet, which actually I'm realizing I didn't show the part about, I didn't actually bring the link in for Padlet, but that's okay. So in Padlet, you're here in Padlet. This is one that I made for the lesson. You can go here to add, and then students can bring in a link. So for example, I have that link right now, right, to the image. Click save, and that's going to post that graphic now on Padlet, and the same would go for a web page that they designed. And what's really cool about it is that if you click on it, then it will pop the web page right up in Padlet, so it doesn't even take them over to another page. All right. Okay, so let's see. This is a question from, Bryson. So thanks, Bryson. So yeah, can I do a video with tips for teachers who have a blend of face-to-face and online and teach simultaneously? Yeah, so I know that a lot of people, and actually I'd even love to hear about that in the comments for this video, just kind of what situation you're in. I work with lots of teachers around the world, and I know people are in a wide variety of situations, some remote, some blended, some going back fully in person. So definitely, Bryson, I can put together some specific material about blended or hybrid teaching strategies with technology. Absolutely. So thanks for that question. All right, it is 7 o'clock. I had a couple other questions, two more that I'm going to answer just really quickly about Loom, or Loomy Live, I should say. So I put out a video on my channel I want to say last week, and this, go back here to the screen share. This video is about how to use this program called Loomy Live to bring in this digital avatar of yourself. If you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. It's pretty cool. It's free. It does require you to download this Loomy camera onto your desktop. It does not work with Chromebooks, only Macs and PCs. And then what you can do is select this as a camera option. You can bring it into basically anything that will allow you to have a different camera choice. And so one question that some people have asked, or actually this was a specific question from Randy. So thanks, Randy, for your question. And that is whether or not you can embed this avatar into Screencastify, Loom, Google Slides, etc. You can. So if you have the Loomy Live camera, you can select it as an option if you're recording a Loom video or Screencastify video. I could even show it with this camera option. So I could do a live stream with my avatar. So any program that allows you to choose the video, you can choose the Loomy Live camera. So definitely. Google Slides is going to be a little bit different. You'd have to bring in a video that you created somewhere else as a way to embed it. There's not going to be another way to bring your avatar directly in the way that you can like drag and drop a Bitmoji in. And then the other question related to Loomy is whether or not students can use it because they're camera shy. I love the idea of having, I'm sorry, this is Sergio asked this question. I love this idea of having students like jump into a Google Meet meeting or a Zoom meeting with a virtual avatar. I think it could be a blast actually to do that. Yes, they can. The only issue is there are definite barriers to doing this. So one, they have to get the app on their phone. They have to create the virtual avatar on their phone, and that might be a barrier. The other big barrier is that it's not a program that you can download on a Chromebook. So if students just have Chromebooks, they're not going to be able to use it at this point. It's possible, I'm not sure, that there may be a web-based version later, but for now, not compatible with Chromebook. So that, could potentially be a significant barrier, but I love the idea. Okay, it's 7. I really appreciate all the questions and comments. Again, if you have a question that you want to ask, drop it in the YouTube comments, and I'm bringing in a few of them every week. If you didn't get your question answered on this live show, you can ask it again in the comments, and I'll try to address some of the things that came up regarding this show in the next show. I am going to be taking next week off. It's election week, and so I know that a lot of attention is going to be spent on that election week in the United States. So I'm taking next week off. I'll be back the following week, and when I do come back, I'm also trying to stream on multiple platforms. So if you're just watching me on YouTube, my goal is to also be streaming on Facebook and in some of the other social media places where you can stream video. So hopefully that's coming so that you have some different options for how you could watch these shows. And as always, if you have a recommendation, you have a request for a show that you would like to see, this video came from a request. So please let me know what you want to see, and I will try to put together a show about it because I want to do work that is responsive and that's meeting your needs. So keep up everything that you're doing for your students. I appreciate you. I know your students appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.